I'm trying to get rid of this guy, the $6,000 Sony Alpha 1, as well as my other bigger full-frame Sony cameras. Let me explain why. On my last trip to Yosemite, I ended up breaking the A1's LCD screen, and when I sent it into Sony for repair, they also found other damages to the camera. The IBIS was broken, there was corrosion inside the camera, and combine that with the broken LCD screen, it basically ended up in a total loss. So I ended up paying, or my insurance ended up paying, $5,500 for this replacement Alpha 1. So I've been doing landscape photography pretty seriously for about 6 years, and this is already my 4th camera that I've lost for a variety of reasons. I shoot in areas and in elements that aren't exactly electronic and camera friendly. The first camera I ever lost, I dropped it off the top of a cliff. The other 2 I've lost to saltwater corrosion, and the A1, of course, is just the latest victim of my terrible habit of breaking cameras. So this is clearly a trend by now, right? For the type of photography that I do in crazy, harsh elements, another episode like this is just bound to happen in a matter of time. The risk only increases when I add on my video camera that I'm not always looking at all the time, as well as adding on another camera body for time-lapse or as a second camera to shoot landscapes with. That just increases the probability of something going wrong out there in the field. So after all of this happened, I asked myself, do I really need to spend an exorbitant amount of money on my camera gear when there are cheaper, maybe not as good alternatives, but I can still achieve a very similar result and I can still get the images that I want to get out of those cameras? So why did I even purchase this A1 in the first place? At that time, I was trying to replace my broken A7R III, and the 2 logical options for most people would probably jump to the A7R4 or the A7R5, but I was quite scared of that 61 megapixels, especially when it came to astrophotography and for photographing in low light. We'll explore more of that in next week's video. And at that time, when I was deciding between the A1 or the A7R5, I had a little bit more money to spend, to splurge a little bit and just get myself the best of the best with the A1. Plus, at that time, I also wanted to get into a little bit more of wildlife photography. So having that extra speed, that 30 frames per second, was definitely helpful. But after breaking my first A1, it's just really got me thinking, if something like this were to happen again, it's just so expensive to replace it and to just get another one, especially when it's an insurance claim. When you're filing an insurance claim, you don't want to start the trend of filing insurance claims every year because you break a camera every year. And while I was interested in dabbling a little bit in wildlife, I haven't fully committed to being like a dedicated wildlife photographer, and I don't do it enough to think that I can justify needing 30 frames per second in terms of speed. And over the past year, I feel like my photography has narrowed down into a couple of subgenres that I really want to dive deep into more and focus on. And using those 3 categories, let me kind of share with you guys why I think downsizing from the A1 might be the best decision for my photography moving forward. All right, so for traveling and hiking, obviously you want your camera gear to be as small and as lightweight and as portable as possible. My aging body isn't getting any younger, and it's not getting any less sore. So it's only a matter of time before I really start dialing down the amount of camera gear that I can carry. I started that process last year by switching out some of my f2.8 G Master lenses, which are bigger, bulkier, more versatile and better image quality. But I switched over to more small, lightweight and portable f4 lenses for landscape photography, as well as switching to Sony's small, lightweight and portable prime lenses for astrophotography. So now with this financial concern fresh in my mind, I think it's a good excuse to kind of downgrade the camera bodies to Sony's smaller, more lightweight and portable, yet still full frame camera bodies. So here's a rundown of what I've done so far. Let me just put this guy away before I drop it and lose another $5,000. For my second body, my time-lapse body, I used to shoot with the Sony a7 IV, 33 megapixels, just to kind of balance between pretty high resolution, but also relatively small file sizes. So the logical choice was to sell the a7 IV and get this guy. This right here is the a7C Mark II. It has that same 33 megapixels, just in a smaller, more lightweight, and more portable camera body. If we do a little bit of size comparison here, the a7 IV is approximately the same size as the A1. And if we compare it to the much smaller and portable A7C, you can see there's a big difference in terms of size. The next change I made in my kit was to switch my vlog camera. I'm now filming on the Sony ZV-E1 instead of the a7S III. for very similar reasons. It's still the same 12 megapixel sensor that performs really well in low light and really good for astrophotography vlogs, but of course it's all in a smaller, more lightweight and portable package. Now the question that I have is, what do I replace the A1 with? Now there are a couple of options that I could replace this beast of a camera with. The first option that I thought the logical choice would be is this guy. This is the Sony a7CR. It's that 61 megapixel camera that I was so scared to shoot with. So we're gonna take this guy up with us. We're gonna shoot some astrophotography and really put it head to head against the A1 to see, how it performs in low light. If I don't like the low light performance of this 61 megapixel sensor, the other option, of course, is to get another A7C Mark II and see if I can get away with 33 megapixels. We're also gonna put this guy to the test against the A1 and see if there really is a big resolution difference between 33 megapixels and 50 megapixels. Now, there were a couple of concerns when I decided to switch over to these smaller bodies. The first concern is, of course, not having dual SD card slots, but I am hopeful that with pro-grade SD cards, as well as these Sony Tough cards here, I hope that I don't run into any issues with, SD cards failing on me. Knock on wood. The other thing was ergonomics. Photographing with these little small camera bodies isn't exactly the most satisfying experience, but because I do most of my photography on tripods, I really don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. All of these smaller cameras do pretty much 90% of what my old cameras used to do, but in a smaller package and at a lower price point. So if I end up losing one of these, it's not that much of a hit to the wallet if I have to replace it. When it comes to shooting seascapes, saltwater is the enemy of all cameras, unless you're shooting with Canon. Because I shoot with the Seascape Master Darwin, he's actually dropped his Canon R5 plus a lens and submerged it into saltwater. The R5 survived, and the lens had a little bit of damage to it, basically from the drop. But when he sent it into Canon, they repaired it for free, and there didn't seem to be any signs of saltwater damage. And I would love to switch to Canon just for that customer service and those free repairs and the saltwater protection, but Canon lenses and Canon camera bodies are just so big and hefty that it kind of doesn't match my sort of style of what I want to get more into. Plus, Canon doesn't make anything that comes close to how good this 12 megapixel sensor from the A7S III and the FX3 and the ZV-E1. Another option is to keep the A1 and just shoot seascapes with these smaller bodies so that if I do lose it to some crazy rogue wave or some saltwater, it's again a cheaper replacement, and maybe reserve the A1 only to be used for safer situations as well as situations where I need the speed. And when it comes to the last pillar of my photography, astrophotography, we're going to do a whole dedicated video testing these cameras head to head to pretty much ultimately decide which one I'm going to be using moving forward. All right, so in conclusion, downsizing my camera gear is probably going to save my back in the long run, as well as save my ass financially if I end up busting and destroying another camera gear, as well as also not really sacrificing the type and the quality of content that I can create. As much as I love this Sony Alpha 1, it is a bit overkill for me. And if I did more wildlife photography, I'd probably have a reason to keep it, but it just hasn't been a pillar and hasn't really been a focus in my photography this year. But as you can see, and as you can probably hear, we're filming this video at Honolulu International Airport. We're about to hop on a flight to Portland, so we're going to be testing all of these cameras to really try to narrow down my decision making about what camera I'm going to be using going forward. But yeah, this trip is going to be fun because it's going to be primarily gear testing, but it's just me, my 4 cameras, and the great outdoors. So I'm about to go hop on a flight, but we'll catch you guys next week for our first astrophotography mission, which will occur tonight from Portland. We'll see you guys then. Yeah.